Welcome back to another episode of the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Neil C. Hughes, and today I've got a great guest lined up for you. Her name is Nic Granger, and she is at the realm of digital transformation and agile leadership over at the North Sea Transition Authority, or NSTA. Now, Nic's role isn't just about handling business transformation. It extends to shaping public policies, driving strategic planning, and effectively managing change. So in today's episode, we're going to take a deep dive into subjects like building digital skills and the culture required to make it a success, the need for diversity in tech, agile and digital transformation, and how we can prepare leaders for the wave of digital change ahead. And we'll also touch on how to influence boards and stakeholders on the relevance and potential of digital and data and the power of collaboration and, of course, unlocking hidden value from all that data. And together, we'll explore the crucial role of digital and data in the transformation of offshore energy in the UK and so much more. So buckle up and hold on tight, because today I'm going to beam your ears all the way to the UK, where Nic Granger is waiting to join us and get the conversation started. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Nic. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Thanks very much for inviting me, Neil. So hi everyone, I'm Nic Granger. I'm Director of Corporate and CFO for the North Sea Transition Authority, the NSTA. So for those of you that haven't heard of us, the NSTA regulate and influence oil, gas and carbon storage industries in the UK. And our priorities at the moment are ensuring security of energy supply for the UK, whilst decarbonising that supply through emissions reductions and accelerating the energy transition to net zero. So my role in that is essentially the direct responsibility for digital, data, IT, finance, corporate services. Essentially anything with numbers in sits in the team. And in the digital data team, we provide data and digital solutions to our internal NSTA team, to industry, academia, the wider public, and essentially we're trying to unlock the value in delivering those three priorities. I'm also the chair of the Offshore Energy Digital Strategy Group, where we're working across the sector on a digital and data strategy for industry.
Well, it's a huge pleasure to have you on the podcast. And we do have a bit of a tradition here on the show of taking the guests back in time to find out more about their journey and what put them on this path. Because I suspect as a small girl, you never dreamed of working for North Sea Transition Authority. I could be wrong, but can you share your origin story and ultimately what would light that spark in you for your passion for tech, and also what would eventually lead you to your current role at NSTA?
Sure. So this is going to sound like a really geeky start here.
Cool.
But my parents bought us a ZX Spectrum, and that was what really sparked my first interest in tech. We recently found the first program that I coded when I was 7, and I should say my skills have gone majorly downhill on the coding front since then. But it really gave me that first point of actually I'm really interested in this. I used to spend a lot of my time on the Spectrum. So I then thought, well, this is where I want to pursue a career in tech. So choosing GCSEs, in the technology category, I was unfortunately allocated home ec as a GCSE rather than IT. So I think my dad had some very interesting conversations with the school, and I eventually got on the course I wanted to. So having got my IT GCSE, I ended up going to uni, doing the tech course I wanted to do. Now, unfortunately, having absolutely no skills in cooking whatsoever, which has carried on till this day. But what I really liked about tech was helping people to improve the way that they're doing things, working through things in a different way. So after a kind of a period in the dark side of accountancy, I moved into my current role at the NSTA, which has got the kind of finance in it, but essentially most of the time we're helping people using data and digital tools to make better decisions.
What a great story. And in nearly 2,500 interviews, you'd be amazed at how many people have referenced the ZX Spectrum, the Commodore 64, copying codes out of books. And it's amazing, really. I mean, those machines had, 16K or 32K of RAM? It's amazing, isn't it?
Exactly. We've come a long way, but they're definitely a good starting point for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, 100%. And a lot of big topics here in 2023 are around digital skills and the kind of culture that businesses are building around that. So I'm curious, how are you focusing on building digital skills and culture within NSTA? And also, how crucial is this for a successful digital transformation within any organisation in any industry, come to think of it?
So 3 years ago, we basically created our digital strategy, and we created that around 5 pillars. And the first of those pillars was very intentionally people, skills and culture. So in my view, if you don't get that right, then having all of the innovative tech in the world doesn't make a difference. If people don't know how to use that technology, then there's no point spending the money on the infrastructure and the tech itself. So we started off by building a digital academy to support our colleagues in building digital skills. So this is colleagues across the breadth of the NSTA as opposed to purely our sort of digital data IT team. Through that, we run monthly digital awareness sessions. We signpost colleagues to different learning and development and make improving digital skills accessible to everyone rather than those people who have purely focused on digital as a career. We also initially created some digital champions. We've renamed these digital ambassadors to basically get someone from every area of the organisation that was a link to the digital team. So no need for any qualifications, experience in IT, tech, or anything like that. The only criteria is that people are enthusiastic about tech. So not necessarily experts, but having those people there as ambassadors has helped us really to embed the digital culture in the organisation. And for me, the starting point is always around, in terms of changing culture, is getting people thinking about what they're doing today, what they're trying to achieve, and making the link between those two and saying, okay, here are some digital tools that we can give you that might help you make better decisions or do things in a different way that makes your job better. So all of that comes back to culture. It doesn't come back to the technology itself. And I think, as a sort of started with, if you put in as much tech as you want, but if people don't know how to use it, they're not going to get value from it.
100% with you there. And a few months ago, you did also mention that you were talking about your origin story and initially being put on that home economics course instead of the tech course that you wanted. And I think stories like that did lead to a lack of diversity in the tech industry. And the industry has often been criticised for a lack of diversity. And I'm hopeful in that it is improving. But how at NSTA are you addressing this issue? And what kind of impact do you see diversity having on things like innovation, problem solving and digital transformation?
Yeah, so innovation and digital transformation are all about change and seeing how to do things in a different way. And if we're all thinking in the same way, or we've all got the same backgrounds or experience, then we're not going to be able to make those innovations and make that change. So I think when we're reshaping digital services, it really is important to have a good understanding of what internal and external customers need. And those are going to be a breadth of needs across sort of backgrounds, experience, roles. So I think bringing in different ideas, getting backgrounds that bring in different frames of reference and perspective is critical in all organizations, but particularly in tech and innovation and those kind of digital transformation roles. So we're obviously working in a STEM-based industry, engineering, digital, IT professionals. And as you say, diversity in those areas traditionally hasn't been that strong. When we started as an organisation, we were clear that inclusion and diversity was going to be a key way that we work. So we do work in a very collaborative way and working with industry. So we're now at a stage as an organisation where we've got our gender split of 52-48 male-female, so relatively equal. When we're recruiting, we're looking for really diverse candidates from a whole range of backgrounds. So in our digital team, we've got people with backgrounds in finance, insurance, health, military, energy, all sorts of different things. We're not looking for a unicorn that can do it all. We're looking for those different points of view that can feed in and help us make that change. We found storytelling a really, really powerful way to do that. So we run sessions across the team on a variety of topics, but recent ones we've done around gender stereotyping, social mobility, just to start our colleagues thinking about things in a different way and getting in that breadth of views. We still have a long way to go, as I think every organisation has, and always sort of keen to hear ideas on what we can be doing more. But for me, if you don't have that diversity, you're not going to be able to make the innovative changes.
And before you came on the podcast today, I was doing a little research on you, and I quickly learned, or what initially stood out for me, is how you're also leveraging agile methodologies at NSTA on your transformation journey. So I'm curious, is there anything you can share around maybe some of the challenges and indeed successes that you've experienced along the way?
Sure. So I think everyone thinks that agile is new, but it's been around for quite a long time now, sort of the early 2000s when it first came in. So our digital services team has been using it for quite a while. It's enabled our digital developments to roll out sort of a high quality products that work for the user, and getting the user really involved in those developments. So we launched a national data repository, basically a cloud-based platform for data reporting and publication over a 6-month development period. So quite a short development period. And working in an agile way meant that we could do that quick launch, but also have a product that's continually being improved based on customer feedback. Which has meant that portal has been ready so that industry could access data for the UK's first carbon storage licensing round that we've announced recently. I think though our greatest success in Agile is taking the Agile tools out of the tech space though and into the wider organisation. So our strategy as an organisation needed a refresh, and we ran that as an Agile project, which essentially shortened the process quite dramatically from the kind of envisaged 18 months to an 8-month delivery timeframe. And that enabled us as an organisation to pivot really quickly and ensure that accelerating the energy transition became an integral part of our approach as an organisation. And that was all by taking those tools out of the kind of tech and digital space and saying, this has really worked for our team here. Why don't we see if we can roll that out for the organisation? So we've rolled that out from board level all the way through the team, have given people the opportunity to access that kind of agile ways of working and agile methodologies. I wouldn't want it to sound easy though. I mean, it's challenging to make agile a success, particularly in those kind of newer areas. And that again comes back to that earlier conversation around cultural change, right? It's a change of mindset from working in that kind of traditional waterfall stage gate kind of approach. And that can be scary. So we really try to support the team taking that jump through sort of initiatives such as the Digital Academy that I mentioned earlier.
And you rightfully said there, you don't want to make it sound too easy, because driving digital change and getting buy-in from everyone, helping every employee understand what's in it for them, why they're doing it, etc., is incredibly challenging. And I'm curious, as a leader, how are you equipping other leaders to drive digital change within their teams and across the organisation? Because I think many times that's the hard bit, not the technology, right?
Absolutely. And I think the starting point is talking about the topic a lot. I bore my colleagues by talking about digital data and cultural change a lot. And I think it's explaining why it's relevant to them and their teams is the important part of it, and talking in a way that's using everyday language that's not too techy. So we, for example, started an enterprise architecture project probably about 4 or 5 years ago now, and it took a really long time to get off the ground. And to be honest, it didn't. And we took a step back and realized that's because other than the small group in the kind of tech team, nobody knew what on earth we were talking about. They didn't know what enterprise architecture was. And in reality, they didn't need to know what enterprise architecture was. So we rebranded that project Digital Excellence and then shortened that to DigEx. So now we talk about our DigEx program a lot. So we're doing the same thing. We've still got legacy systems, technical debt. We're decoupling the data from those systems in an architecture way. But actually what the organisation here is we're talking about excellence. We're talking about how digital can make their roles better. So I think equipping other leaders with that digital change is saying, okay, this is a really important priority, but you don't need to worry about the technology elements that go behind it. And another key way we've done that is to make sure that when we're prioritising projects, we base those on the value they can add to our overall priorities as an organisation, rather than purely what the technical team feels should be the next priority to come up. So, for example, we're currently working with partners in other organisations such as the Crown Estate on co-location of offshore wind and carbon storage sites. To do that, both organisations and their teams and industry need to get a better understanding of the UK basin. Digital tools, GIS sort of based tools can really help with that. So at the moment, we're providing the digital tools and helping across those organisations to drive change. For the people working with those tools, they don't need to know how they're created, but they do need to know that actually these can help them make their decisions better.
And how do you go about approaching and influencing boards and stakeholders on the importance and value of digital and data transformations? Is there anything you can share around that too?
So I think stakeholders and boards quite often want to jump to talking about AI, machine learning, metaverse, the fun, innovative tech that you read about in the papers. I'm not sure that a lot of organisations, particularly smaller organisations, are actually there yet. They really need to be investing in sort of digital skills, the data quality, making sure documents are machine readable. Those topics don't really sound quite as much fun. People don't really want to talk about that kind of thing so much. So in terms of influencing boards and stakeholders, for me, the important bit is bringing it to life. quite early on as an organization, we said we were going to be data driven. We were going to use data to make our decisions, to enable the industry to make decisions better using data. So our data analyst colleagues created benchmarks across the industry. And each year, our chief exec meets with managing directors from industry, the performance across those benchmarks, and then openly discussed. So we're essentially showing data in action. And that helps to enable those conversations, both internally for us, but within industry as well, about investment in areas such as data quality. And then that can then act as the feedstock for the things that people wanted to talk about in the first place, the AI, the machine learning. So for me, it's all about bringing the importance of digital and data transformation to life for people in the room.
And I think right now, data is often considered the new oil, especially when combined with things like artificial intelligence and machine learning. But again, if we put the technology to one side for a moment, let's talk about the ROI and the value that the technology can deliver. How is NSTA unlocking value from your data? And are you able to share any examples of the kind of impacts from these efforts and what it actually delivers too?
Yeah, sure. So when we started back in 2016, we had an open data site that was getting about 10,000 requests a week. We're now seeing that being at 1.2 million requests a week through use of APIs. So we've put that technology in. We've built the national data repository I talked about earlier. We started with 15 terabytes of data. We're now at about 500. We've got 4,000 users from all continents, I'm told, except Antarctica. So that will be on our next target list. This is data collected through sort of legacy oil and gas operations. But what we're seeing now is that data is being repurposed to better understand different priorities, different parts of the subsurface. So we've seen companies recently reprocess some of the shallow seismic data and then use that for successful offshore wind round bids and recently for the carbon storage license round. So on the day of the carbon storage license round open, our download rate increased by 20%. So data is a key element in that process. So the kind of return on investment for us is, what does that mean to the country? So the licenses that we offered award for last week can store 10% of the total annual UK emissions. So we're talking 30 million tonnes of carbon dioxide a year by 2030. So that's a really dramatic way of unlocking the value, and in this case, for reduction of emissions and accelerating the energy transition.
And there's a lot of headlines at the moment around technology replacing people, but I often think that it's more about increasing collaboration, breaking down silos and internal barriers and helping teams collaborate better, and also humans collaborating better with machines. But can you elaborate on some of the strategies for encouraging collaboration on data and digital solutions, specifically in context of digitalising offshore energy in the UK? I appreciate there might not be too much you can share, but is there anything you can?
Yeah, sure. So in recent years, it's become quite clear that there are real success stories. So some of the ones I've been talking about earlier in different parts of offshore energy sector. But what we weren't seeing as much was collaboration across the different parts of that sector. So here I'm kind of talking offshore wind, oil and gas, carbon storage, for example. All of us are trying to do the same thing. We're trying to ensure the country's security of supply whilst also accelerating the energy transition. And actually working together is the only way to do that, because we've all got our own elements of it, and we need to get an integrated spatial view of the basin to be able to deliver on that. So I was asked a few years ago to chair a task force looking into how we could create a cohesive digital data approach across the offshore energy sector. And towards the back end of last year, we published a digitalising offshore energy strategy, which is publicly available from the Energy Systems Catapult website. And for me, the first step around that was getting the right people in at that point, virtual room and actually talking. So when people started to realise how much overlap there was in the topics that they were talking about were important to their part of the subsectors, was digital skills, having sort of good, high quality, consistent data and how to actually access it. There was a realisation then that if we work together, it reduces the burden across all of those organisations. So collaborating actually makes things quicker and easier. And sometimes I think it's just being open and transparent helps, talking to others, reassuring yourself that actually there are other people in the same boat, other people struggling with the same challenges. It's really helped. So we now have a digital strategy group. We've got 3 task groups that are looking to deliver on those recommendations. And we're talking around data principles, having a common data toolkit across the offshore energy sector in terms of digital portals, and then looking at how we can work together for cross-sector digitalization. We're all having the same conversations, for example, on digital skills. How can we take those learnings and actually say, let's take an approach that works and delivers this together? So I'm not saying we've perfected collaboration, but I do think collaboration is a really key way that we can unlock that value for, in our case, offshore energy, but I think across organisations as well.
I think it's a powerful moment to end on. But before I do let you go, just a big thank you for sharing your experiences and invaluable insights. But I'm going to ask you to leave everyone listening with one final gift, and that is a book that means something to you or you'd like to leave everyone listening with, and I'll add it to our Amazon wish list. All I'm going to ask is, what would you like to leave us with and why?
So I've talked a lot about innovation and the need for change. And I think for me, one thing that inspired a book I read recently was Sam Conniff's Be More Pirate. So it talks a lot about diversity and equality. It talks about disrupting markets and innovation. And it does that all through the lens of the golden age of pirates. So quite a light-hearted book, but it talks all about how we can be good troublemakers, our willingness to think differently, to challenge others, and also be accepting of us, people challenging us. So I think it makes you think about how to disrupt things in a good way. And it's also a fun read because, it's about pirates.
I was going to say, you had me at pirates right there. So I'm going to be checking that out. I'll get it added to our wish list. But before I let you go, for anyone wanting to just explore some of the topics we talked about today in more detail or learn more about North Sea Transition Authority, is there any way you'd like to point everyone listening?
Yeah, sure. So we've got our website is probably the best place for large amounts of information. So that's nstauthority.co.uk. We also have our company account on LinkedIn under NST Authority and Twitter at NST Authority. And then if people want to connect with me direct on any of these topics, the best way is probably through LinkedIn at Nic Granger.
Well, we covered so much in a short amount of time there, from building digital skills and culture, influencing boards and stakeholders on digital and data, to unlocking the value, delivering ROI, and ultimately encouraging collaboration right across the business. Incredibly cool. I love chatting with you, Nic, and I'd love to get you back on in the future. But thanks for sharing your story today and how it all began with a ZX Spectrum.
Great. Thanks very much, Neil. It's been great talking to you.
So a huge thank you to Nic Granger from the NSTA for coming on here and sharing her knowledge and expertise on a variety of compelling topics, from agile leadership to the power of collaboration to driving digital change. And our conversation today has certainly shown us the potential of data and digital technology in shaping the future of offshore energy here in the UK, and also why it's leaders like Nic who are at the forefront of this transformative journey. So inspiring. Once again, I'd like to extend a huge thank you to Nic for joining me on the podcast today, and for everybody tuning in from around the world. Remember, this conversation doesn't stop here. So feel free to engage with me on social platforms, which is just at Neil C. Hughes at LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, etc. Share with me your thoughts, ideas, questions. Email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. I'm the easiest guy in the world to find. But before I go, I just want to remind you that technology works best when it brings people together. So hopefully you'll join me again tomorrow, where we'll explore another topic together. So stay safe, stay curious, keep innovating, and a big thank you for listening. Until next time, don't be a stranger.